the White House, before the trip, presented it as in terms of potential economic benefits to the United States. But it seems to me that, and by that they mean, I presume, that there would be more imports to Brazil from the United States. However, it seems to me that one of the Brazilian concerns at the moment is that you're beginning to import too much. So how does one reconcile one with the other? What I'm really asking is what happened in concrete terms at that as a result of that visit?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the visit was excellent, and it came in a very timely moment when both countries are trying to deepen their relations even more. We have traditional relations with the United States. The United States was the first country to recognize the independence of Brazil from Portugal at the beginning of the 19th century, and we have had since then a very close relation. We are very good partners and allies, and this trip was not the first one. As a matter of fact, it was the 14th visit of an American head of state to Brazil.
Oh, yes.
That's very interesting. Many presidents came to Brazil many times. President Obama was the 10th president to visit Brazil, but it was the 14th visit because President Clinton was there twice.
Bush was there twice, wasn't he?
President Bush was there twice, and also President Roosevelt was there twice because he...
Really?
Yeah, he went during the war period, he went to the northeast of Brazil. It was the only way to get to Africa by that time and to go to all the meetings and he all visited Brazil on the way there because he had to flew to the northeast Brazil to cross the Atlantic, and on the way back, and he met with the president both times. They were both official visits. So,
however, this has been a period of some differences between the two countries. For example, there is the Americans have been reluctant to endorse the Brazilian hope of becoming permanent members of the Security Council. But I can go back further. There was the Brazilian-Turkish initiative in Iran, which irritated Washington considerably. On the other hand, let's just stop it there and say, but when they talk about it here, they sort of talk about a Brazil that is forging an independence that makes it not entirely the kind of strong supporter of American policy that it used to be.
Well, first I'd like to finish the answer to the first question. I think that the meaning of the important aspect of the visit was the political dialogue and, of course, the deepening of the economic relation. We do have a very strong economic relations. We do have a lot of investments in both countries, and we do have a very strong flow of commerce, a big trade flow between both countries. It's true that we have a trade deficit, but this is not a matter of concern, of major concern. Of course, we are working with to balance our foreign trade, but we understand that the exports, the U.S. exports to Brazil after the 2008 crisis grew in a much more dynamic way than our imports, because the recovery in Brazil was much faster. Brazil, the reaction of the government to the challenges of the crisis produced a very quick response from the economic engine of the country, and people kept on buying and consuming and building houses. So there was a large possibility for imports, and as a matter of fact, the American imports grew a lot. That's why we changed it from a situation in which we had a surplus in 2007 to a huge deficit of more or less 10 or 11 billion dollars at the end of 2010. You have to consider this in the broader how would I say, context of the economic and political relations. We are working on that because our main goal is to have a very balanced foreign trade with all countries. We do not work to build only surpluses. We want to have more trade, but a trade of quality. And that, of course, we are working. That was also one of the aspects that were discussed between the two heads of states in Brasilia. But besides the economic side, which was very productive and very good, I think that the very important aspect of the visit was the political dialogue that was kept, and also chemistry that resulted from this trip between the two heads of states. President Rousseff had already met President Obama, but in a different condition. She was chief of staff of President Lula, and she came here to Washington with the Minister of Trade of Brazil for the CEO Forum meeting. Yes, the same one I mentioned. I missed the meetings in Brasilia this time, and they were received by President Obama, so she had met him before. But now she met him in a different position, president. They had a dialogue of heads of states. I was present together with the U.S. ambassador in Brasilia and other high officials from both sides, and this was a very interesting conversation. We discussed a number of important issues, not only bilateral but regional and global issues, and we are very glad to realize that both countries have the same opinions in a very large number of important issues. And as you mentioned, the second question, you mentioned the reference to the United Nations and also the Brazilian-Turkish deal with Iran. This was not discussed during the meeting because this is a part of normal life of countries, and that's part of multilateralism. That's why we have multilateral organisms, not only political as the United Nations, but the G20, the IMF, and the World Bank. These are the place to discuss different issues, and that it's normal that countries have different positions or different visions of each subject. In the case of Iran, what Brazil and Turkey did was to try, as both countries were the security countries, the Security Council was to try to break a deal that would help bring both parts or all parts back to the negotiating table and then produce the further decisions and negotiation. That was nothing more than that, and I don't think this created any kind of irritation or difference because we were, not to my knowledge, I never heard any complaint about this. And as to the Security Council, I think that the importance of the visit was that President Obama, first, when he went to India, he stated that the Security Council has to be reformed, and it has to reflect the reality of the 21st century. And that's exactly our position. So we were very happy that
this was taken by the Indians, though, as an endorsement of India.
Yeah, it is an endorsement. He mentioned it specifically, and we are very happy because India and Brazil share the same positions. Right. So we are very happy, and we're very happy with this public declaration that the United States recognized the need of a reform of the Security Council and of the United Nations as a whole. And in Brazil, he said privately and in public that Brazil is a central country in this discussion, and when is the time for this reform, which we hope will take place soon, but maybe it will take a long time.
Global leader, he called it.
Yeah, and he used the number. He recognized the aspirations of Brazil, and in private and in public, not only, but many other high officials have said that Brazil is a central country. In this, we are discussing all issues, but we are not focused in only one issue. We now, our main interest is to have the support of most countries in the United Nations to this reform that will expand the number of permanent and non-permanent members in the Security Council, and that would improve the working methods of the Security Council to adapt to this new reality. But there are a number of other issues that have also to be discussed. The relation between an enlarged Security Council with the General Assembly, the veto, and many other questions that will have to be discussed afterwards. I think that first things first, we have first to decide whether the world wants a new Security Council which would reflect the reality of the 21st century and not the one of the pre-war in the first half of last century. It's a completely different world, and so many large countries such as India, Brazil, and big economies like Japan, like Germany, and other big countries and important countries in Africa, like South Africa. Well, we have to decide. And one of the aspects that's been also discussed is the issue of the regional representation.
Right.
So this is another important issue too. And it's difficult, of course, to decide which country will
Yes,
be.
persuade the English and the French that the EU is going to represent Europe. They
have 2 seats in the Security Council,
right,
and if Germany joins, it'll be a
have
third.
3. Yes.
3.
Right. But, well, of course. But in these informal talks, has any progress actually, I mean, can one actually register progress into this?
Well, it all depends on what you consider progress, of course, because I think there was, it was not a surprise that the position of the United States renewed before the visit of President Obama, but it was very good that a new president in office during his first visit to Brazil, with a new president just 2 months or 3 months in office, that they restated the positions of both countries, that we want a reformed Security Council, we want a reformed United Nations with an enlarged Security Council with more permanent and non-permanent members. I think this was very important, but we never doubted that the United States had this position, and we knew that before.
Both towards the hemisphere and globally, likely to change in any substantive way with the new presidency?
No, I don't think so. Besides being a president from the same party as her predecessor, as President Lula, it's a government that will continue the main programs of President Lula's government, both domestically and internationally, of course with her personal touch, that's more than natural, but the mainstream of the foreign policy, to speak specifically of foreign policy, I don't believe there will be big changes. Brazil will continue to defend multilateralism, will continue to defend the principles, the basic principles of our foreign policy, including, may I offer you some water?
Thank you.
Coffee,
yes,
or would you like some coffee?
It was nice, actually. Thank you.
And also all the main principles that have always oriented our foreign policy.
Well, I mean, in the last 5 or 6 years, as the country has prospered economically, there has been a greater tendency, it seems to me, to widen your horizons and to think beyond the hemisphere more than before. and also to act more independently. Would you agree with any of those?
Has grown a lot. Brazil grew during the 20th century at very high rates, and we continue to grow in a very high rates during this first decade of the 21st century. And I think that we are not beginning, but I mean we are taking a lot of different responsibilities. We are proposing and we are taking part in a number of different initiatives. For instance, by the end of last century, in the early 90s, we joined and we established the Mercosur with Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, which will be joined in the near future by Venezuela and other countries. We would like to see Colombia join in Mercosur. That would be very important contribution and a very important partner. But so all these new initiatives, which were not only Brazilian but in the region, they were possible because the country grew and could start more the different policies in different aspects, and more policies, social policies, with a view to more social inclusion that allowed us and gave us the conditions to have a more active participation in the world scenery. Before that, I think that the country and the governments had to be limited to the very serious domestic problems that we had.
Mm-hmm. You referred just now to the transition from different forms of autocracy to democracy in Latin America. Could this serve as a model for what is happening in the Arab world?
Well, I don't think any country can be an example or a model exactly to another, especially countries from such faraway regions. I think that you can share common values and cultural values, but it's very difficult. I wouldn't be able to tell you whether the experience, the Brazilian or the South American or the Latin American experience would be valid for other countries. But I think that democracy as a value in itself, it's very important, and I think that what the people in many areas or in many regions of the world they are looking for is democracy, is participation, is the right to freely express themselves. And, well, I think this has to be taken into account by different governments. I mean, people want to participate and to express their opinion. I think that this is an important thing to be taken into account.
Two things I really wanted to sort of ask you. One was China. To a certain extent, your economic well-being depends on China's economic well-being, in the sense that they are a major importer of your raw materials. Mm-hmm. Is this a fact, or, I mean, do you worry about what's happening in China in terms of your own prosperity? Other than, of course, you have to worry about what's happening in China anyway. But, I mean,
well, we worry about what's happening in all countries. And China is a very important partner of Brazil in different areas. We have, since the 80s, a very important program of cooperation in science and technology, and in space science, for instance, in satellite building. And we are important trade partners to China.
Sure.
China today is the first trade partner of Brazil.
Right.
That's first time in history. it became number one, and the United States number two, which was it was the other way around. For the United States has always been the first partner,
Right.
and China. But we do have an important trade with China, although most of it is raw material, and we are working with Chinese to have a better quality trade with them. Not only raw material, but we also do. We have we sold airplanes to
Yes.
to China, and we have a lot of raw material, but we have industrialized products too, and that's what we want. And we have been buying a lot from China too. But it's very important to note that although the trade flow between the two countries is very important, very high, we still have a huge surplus with China.
Absolutely, yes. Well, that's what I worried. You know, the thing is, one has to keep an eye on what's going on over there.
Well, yes,
whether
but
they manage to actually create a consumer society.
Well, they're doing that. It's a huge country, with a billion and a half inhabitants, and of course there is space in this huge market for every country, not only for Brazil but for many others. One country wouldn't be able
Right.
to sell or to sell everything they need in such a huge country. Of course, the market is also growing in China, but it's a fundamental partner not only in Brazil but in the whole region and in Africa,
Sure.
and many other regions of the world.
Absolutely, they're all over the place.
You just have to take a look at the numbers of the bilateral trade between the U.S. and China.
Sure.
It's gigantic.
What are your concerns about what could happen in your region?
Well, we hope that the integration progress will advance, will be a reality, and the region is multi-ethnical, multiracial. It's a democratic region. We haven't had wars for over a century, in the case of Brazil, for a century and a half, and then in our region. I think we have all the conditions necessary for a bigger development and a bigger social development. And I think that what I would hope is that in 10 years, Mercosur is enlarged and is integrated by more countries, that our trade within the region is free of barriers, that the result of this trade is more development, and that this development brings better conditions of life for the populations of this country and of these countries. And I'm not only speaking of Mercosur. We have different schemes of integration and cooperation. We have the UNASUR, which is the Union of South American Nations, which is also a space for political consensus and also for working on the infrastructure for integration.
Right.
That's very important. We have ALADI, which is the Latin American Association of Integration.
What is that called?
ALADI, A-L-A-D-I. It's the old Latin American Association of Free Commerce, which was founded in the 60s, and in the 80s from ALAUC to ALADI, which is Latin American Association of Integration.
I see.
And this is the sieges in Montevideo in Uruguay, and the main purpose of this association is to promote trade, integration and trade between the countries. But it's not only South America, it's Mexico too. Mexico is a member, and Central American are
But Mexico is also a member of Mercosur, isn't it?
No,
no.
not of Mercosur, no. Being a member of the NAFTA, it's difficult. We can negotiate, but it's a difficult negotiation because it's a custom union, the Mercosur.
Yes.
And NAFTA is a free trade area.
Yes, right.
And then you have the problems of the, we in Mercosur, we have an external tariff, a common external tariff. And it has to be respected. All countries have to have the same external tariff for the same products.
Sure.
And in Mexico, in the agreement with the United States and Canada, they have a different structure of tariffs. And it's not impossible. It's difficult to combine both systems. But Mexico is also a very important partner of the region, a very important country, a huge country, and with a very rich culture, with a lot of natural resources, and democratic country. So we praise very much.
And one huge problem at the moment.
Yeah, but well, these are momentary problems, and I think that they have all the means to solve all problems that they might face. But it's a very important. But they are a member of ALADI.
Is Mercosur, the intention of Mercosur is to arrive at a sort of European Union in Latin America, and to a certain extent the defense mechanisms that implies?
Yeah, well, not necessarily. We're not thinking of transferring the European model to South America, but it's a customs union, and we would like to advance and change to a common market in the future. We do not have the same bureaucratic structure that the European Union has. We have been building our integration process in a different pace. I think that we made a lot of progress because we got to the present stage, which is very advanced, in 15 or 16 years. And Europe took 50 years to get to of course, it's a much larger number of countries with their own peculiarities and their views, and of course it's not a uniform region. Latin America is much more uniform. We are the multiracial, but we are all products of the Iberic colonization.
Except for you, the same language.
The same language. It's a different.
Same culture, even you.
To a certain extent. And the language is very, very close. It's a result of Iberic colonization, and of course, but the rhythm and the pace of integration was completely different. But we think in the future to advance in different areas. If you ask, are you thinking of a common currency?
Common currency.
Right now, no, it's not. We are not at that point yet. Common currency needs first a long period of a common macroeconomic policy, which is not exactly the case right now. We still need. We are still developing or emerging economies, which still need
fixed exchange rates, that sort of thing.
Exchange rates, and also all the incentives to investments, and domestic and international, and a number of different things. We have in Brazil, you have regions that which are very, very developed. They have the same level of the Western countries in Europe, so the United States, and others which are still very poor. So the government has to work on all these fronts and try to create the incentives for development, balanced and equal the development in all the country. So you still need some more freedom to act, and you cannot be subject to total coordination. We still need to put the house in order.
But the extension, of course, of the EU is that there is actually a European Parliament.
We do have a parliament, Mercosur. Parliament of Mercosur, yeah. It's not yet elected, directly elected. It will be in the near future. For the time being, each parliament elects representatives. And at the beginning, it was 20 or 30 representatives from each country. but we are working and advancing on a different formula in which the members would be elected, and also the representation has to be different.
Sure,
because
yes. Districts
and the countries, the size of the countries, the population, the economy, you cannot have exactly the same. Otherwise, you would not advance in anything. You would have
and courts.
Commercial courts for the time being. We had a dispute settlement.
Maybe the commercial courts. I didn't know. How does Brazil cope with the positions of Venezuela?
Well, Venezuela is a very important partner of Brazil. We do have excellent relations, and we do have an important cooperation program, and even trade and investments. We have joint ventures, joint investments in refineries. PDVSA, the Venezuelan oil company, has an investment in Brazil. It's a joint venture with the Brazilian oil company, building refineries, and it's a very important partner. We have a surplus with Venezuela. They import from Brazil much more than we import from them. And they're members of UNASUR.
Right.
They are candidates. They still missing the approval of one country to become full members of Mercosur, which is very. But they take part.
Which is the country?
The Congress of Paraguay has still to approve it.
Really?
It's very close. It will come in the next month, few months.
The Colombians approved it?
Colombia is not a member.
Another
It's only Brazil, Argentina,
right.
Uruguay, and Paraguay for the time being. Venezuela will be the fifth.
And
then
Chile?
No. Only these. I mean, of Mercosur, of the Customs Union.
Right.
They are associate members. Chile is associate member,
right.
But for the political consultation and for the political mechanisms, and they have commercial agreements. Mm-hmm. We have a Mercosur,
right.
The four: Chile, Mercosur, Peru, Mercosur, Colombia.
I see.
And even Mercosur, Venezuela. But this, when they join, it will be different. This will end, and they will be part of the full mechanism. But the other countries in the region, for instance, Bolivia is not a member, but Bolivia is associated member. They have special agreements, commercial agreements with the bloc, in which we negotiate tariffs and products and quantities and everything.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And as far as oil is concerned, you've actually made huge discoveries of oil offshore, have you not? Which makes you a major oil producer in the region.
Yeah, well, Brazil will be a very important oil producer. These findings of huge deposits, they are very, very important, but they are in a region, they are offshore between Rio, São Paulo, Espírito Santo, Rio, and São Paulo, this southeast portion of Brazil, but they are at 7,000 meters below sea level.
Right.
It's below the salt layers.
I see.
And
is that lower than? Is that deeper than the BP drill here?
Much deeper. Much deeper. It's 7,000 meters. This is something like 5 miles.
Feet, yes.
5 miles deep, below the sea, below the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, right.
That's the technology to drill and to extract and to commercially is a challenge. And we have these discoveries. We have started drilling and extracting, but it's not at commercial level so far. We still need a lot of investments and infrastructure for the extraction and transportation. And as a matter of fact, Petrobras, the state oil company, last year had launched new actions. How do you say it? a capitalização da Petrobras.
Which, in what sense?
They for capitalizing, for attracting.
They gave licenses, you mean?
No. They sold actions, shares.
They went public?
No, they are public. It's an IPO.
Oh, an IPO.
An IPO. Sure. And it was the largest IPO in the world so far. It was something like 60 billion reais, $60 billion. To have more capital, to invest. It's an IPO, the acronym I was looking for. And this is exactly to be invested in the production, in the drilling and the extraction and production.
And is the quality the same as in Venezuela? In other words, it's a high crude?
Yeah. The quality is more or less the same. It's, and most of the oil that Brazil produces is the quality, is the heavy quality.
Yes.
And
this requires special refining.
Special refining and blending with lighter oil. So we are autosufficient, but we still import oil because we need the lighter brand to be blended and refined in Brazil. But it's a huge...
It also limits the market to a certain extent.
Yeah. And it's a huge progress from... my first assignment abroad was here at the embassy 30 years ago. I remember by that time we didn't have one drop of oil. We imported everything.
I see.
And today we produce more than we consume. Of course, we still have to. That was a big difference. That made a big difference in our balance of payments because there was a huge pressure. By that time, the world was completely different. And by that time, the oil account was something like $8 or $10 billion, which today would be nothing.
Peanuts, right?
For peanuts for any country, but it represented a huge burden to our foreign for our balance of payments.
Well, thank you very much. This is very interesting.
Thank you for coming, and very interesting conversation too.